Good evening,
Hello,
everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to this last
welcome
minute
to
show.
I think this is the quickest put together animal rights show in history, I think. So,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, none of
It
us knew
might
we were going
be.
to do it until this morning. So,
Very true. Very true.
yeah, I need to talk to people about. Well, we got the usual stuff about if you want to see the chat, you're best on my YouTube channel, and of course we don't charge for you to talk to us, so chat away. And then the issue is that if you do, because some people do, tune in on Facebook and you comment, your name won't come up. It'll come up as Facebook user. Okay, so it doesn't mean there's anything wrong at your end. It's Facebook communication with StreamYard or something that's going off. So I just thought I'd mention that in case it's an issue for anybody. Okay, so we had Deb was first.
Well done, Deb.
Then Michael.
Hey,
Carolyn
Michael.
Harris. Hello, Carolyn. Joanna and
Joanna.
from
New York. Is that all right? I can never say that. It gets worse every time. Sorry, Philip.
Yeah,
I must practice more.
Thought you were going to miss your cue there, Wendy. But there you go. Right. So in a fun-packed show, which we've just cobbled together. So we thought we'd do a news one because news items are always coming in, and we kind of plan on having one in every show. But every time we do that, the one that we've chosen, like 2 weeks ago, gets superseded by something else, and then so we thought we'll do 2 or 3 today. So we're gonna start off as you do with something with Jolly. So we're gonna talk about animals in war, aren't we, Wendy? So,
we are indeed.
So this is the picture that you wanted for some reason. So what's going on here, Wendy?
I know. I think the reason I wanted this in, this is local to me. This is there's a group of people who are knitting these toppers for post boxes, and at the moment there's quite a few of them. I think I sent a couple more, but it doesn't matter if those are not in because this isn't off, to be fair. But then there's a lot. These get posted onto the Nextdoor app, and then there's a lot of comments about it, like very, very positive comments celebrating and saying, "Oh, this is amazing! I'm so glad. These are such talented people." And obviously, there's a lot of talent goes into that, a lot of work. And this particular one, I was obviously struck my interest because they've actually represented our fellow animals on there, which some of the others that I've seen hadn't. It was the soldiers and just talking about the humans involved in the war. So this one particularly caught my interest. And then, of course, there are the purple poppies on there that represent fellow animals who've been victims or so-called heroes, the old hero narrative of war. Oh, you did put those up as well.
Yeah. It says I'll have to. Red is just a general one. Purple is for our fellow animals. White is a peace poppy, isn't it? I mean, I remember we wear white poppies, didn't we? And then black is African black Caribbean, I think it's saying here. African stroke black Caribbean. And pink, support of, can't read that bit actually. Oh, just military families. Okay, so it's moved from just having a red one to a whole kind of range of things now. The chain. Do you notice they've had to chain it on?
I know, isn't that the sign of the times?
Yeah.
But I thought, in a way, it's kind of like I don't know if is it a double-edged sword or whatever. It's kind of like, in a way you could see this in a positive light and say, well, people are recognizing that humans are not the only people who have, lost their lives during wartime, and that kind of thing. But actually, and as Deb's commented here, you know, this shouldn't be happening at all. Like they're not. Why are we putting these individuals into our human created wars that they've got nothing to do with? And then we celebrate them as some kind of hero, as if they've made like the ultimate sacrifice, or they've been of service to their country and they've done their duty, all of which are human concepts, and paradigms and things like that. So it just seems like, yes, it's a really bitter taste when I saw that. Although, there's so many like positive comments about it, and it's just like, where to even start, advocating and educating people about this for our fellow animals, because there is that narrative that they are, that they are heroes, and that's, and I think they should be recognized for what they've done, but it's also recognizing that they didn't get a choice in that. They didn't consent to that. They're being forced into harm's way, forced into dangerous situations. They're enslaved. They're captured. They're being bred in, to form these services. And also humans are kind of recognize what I find really interesting about all of this as well is that humans are recognizing these traits and skills of our fellow animals. And then instead of recognizing them as like, oh, well, these are amazing individuals that should have their own, their own rights respected and be seen as individuals and have their own self-determination, it's like, nope, let's exploit and use the traits that they've got to our own gain, even in times of war. So it's, and I think if we look through some of the images and articles that we've all been finding, there's so many different representations of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I was saying to Nella before we came on, the one on the right there with the saluting, I was thinking, what happens if it rains? Are they going to kind of slowly kind of,
Just you to think of that, Doug. I hadn't even thought of that.
Before we go on, Michael just says, missed it. It moved. Roger Yates is a waiter. Who knew? I don't know what that means. And then Wendy, somebody says that you look like her dad. So that's interesting.
Do I look like your dad? More joy. Do I look?
I'm assuming that's directed at me, but there you go.
It says, yeah. Did you think that said Wendy? Weirdly, you look like my dad. I still haven't managed to convince.
No, I was just making one of my useless jokes.
Oh, okay. Because
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's not. They get worse and worse. My jokes, don't they? So this is a U.S. Army picture, and you're just thinking about the noise here. I mean, they don't seem to do anything to help the elephant. I mean, that gun when it's going off, I mean, that looks like one of those, what do they used to call it, Tommy gun, or there was a word, wasn't there, for that type of gun, Gatling gun or something like that, But I mean, they were very noisy. So that's the first thing that struck me. Then the second thing that struck me was the reference to insects. You see that there? Remembering the countless horses, dogs, dolphins, pigeons, elephants, cats, insects, and other non-human animals who were forced into danger during time. So do you think that just is in the field of combat rather than they can't be using the insects, or did they?
No, I assume it was in combat. Like, for example, when bombs are falling from the sky, insects, and there are explosions, like thousands of insects get hurt. But what I found interesting is that no matter the species or the country or the army, all the articles I tried to read for today, they talk about our non-human animals in the same way, presenting them, as Wendy said, as heroes, saying about them serving their country. But animals have not countries. They don't recognize flags and nations and borders. This is a completely human construction, and most of the time they are all of the time, when there is a war, they are victims, and very often they are also weaponized against other humans. So
Yeah, well, as Wendy said, we're going to see some of that. Have you seen this bit about the cats in airports? I mean, obviously you knew about sniffer dogs, but do you know about the cats?
no, I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
That's interesting, isn't it? Does that mean that cats can sniff a certain type of drug that dogs are not as good at, or something?
Well, they're good at catnip. I know that much.
Yeah.
I've got pictures of the crew here, literally high as kites on catnip. It's quite hilarious to watch them, like just going into the most zen. I'll have to send you some pictures. It's just so funny.
But
Yeah,
that's
no,
that's not a problem at
worrying though,
airports,
isn't
is it? You know, anybody carrying catnip will be arrested.
Oh, that would be funny though. But yeah, no, that is worrying.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, could be the Netherlands, Taiwan. Can't remember which. Okay. Well, I suppose they'd be smaller. You don't have to take them for a walk. So there's that as well.
Yeah, but then you would have to convince them.
Yes.
Hold on a little second here. Morejoy is saying that they have tried catnip. Morejoy, tell us more. Like what happened?
Right,
And
in what
I'll
context?
hear more about this. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be a revelation and a half.
That's a whole other show to do.
Yeah, that might be our next show. The varied use of catnip. So,
and Jack says, "Oh well, there goes my international catnip smuggling empire."
yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Oh, I have, but it's not great. Ah, shame. That's
So
shame.
another serious one. So these are Greek, Nella.
Yes, these are from Second World War, and you know the role of donkeys and mules in that war, yeah, at least in Greece, unfortunately, was very large. I mean, they carried all the guns, all the ammunition up in the mountains, and you may have Greece in your mind as a warm climate country, but that particular year, like from 1940 until 1945, the winters were very harsh, especially in the mountains, and there was lots of snow, and humans and non-humans dying from frostbite. And yes, what you see was apparently very common. Everything would be carried by mules, donkeys, horses, and women on foot that were trying to deliver, supplies to the soldiers. So, unfortunately, the role of non-human animals was very big.
I was fascinated by the picture on the left. Is that taken in Greece, or is that Greek soldiers elsewhere? Do you know?
It's in Greece. It's in Greece, from what I've read.
It looks very wet, though, doesn't it? I mean,
It was wet. It was wet. It was snow. It was wet. It was very cold, from what I've read.
Yeah, doesn't look great at all. Okay, I think this is the last one. So this is in this Park Lane, isn't it, Wendy? In London, Park Lane.
Yes. A memorial. Yeah, I think it's probably it's on the edge of Hyde Park, or let me just double check that.
It's actually quite extensive, this, and so we've got the this is the website, and as I said, it's quite extensive. Animals in War Memorial Fund, and it's got the entire kind of story about it, and there's even the monument itself. It's got something to do with the design, the symbolism of the design. The wall, images of many different animals used in the 20th century conflict are depicted in bas reliefs on the inside of the longer section of the wall. So the famous pictures there of the the notion from the First World War of gas mask, the mustard gas mask that horses war, which must have been terrifying for them. You would have thought. And then there's a bit about the sculpture, and then the bit that caught my eye, mentioned it to Nella and Wendy before, is the unveiling of the monument. And they only went and got the Princess Anne, who is probably the royal person who has probably used and abused horses more than any other of them, although I suppose they're all involved. But I just thought, well, again, is this just like another thing about species society, that there's no moral consistency, and there's, this is a monument doing, I mean, you see, that's the thing. I mean, is this a commemoration, or is it kind of celebrating, or is it kind of, I mean, I wonder if it says in any of these things we shouldn't have done this, or anything like that, because there doesn't.
I doubt it very much.
Yeah,
I think it's like you said, about having moral consistency, but actually, in terms of consistency, they are being consistent with the welfareist paradigm under the speciesist umbrella in a way, aren't they? Because we are the paradigm that it's okay to use our fellow animals as long as insert whatever the criteria is, like we treat them like this, or we do this for them. So for them, it's fine to sit on their backs. It's fine to send them into war. It's fine that they do their duty, serve their country, as long as we put up a memorial and we recognize it. And while they're in the war, they are treated well. I mean, who knows? We don't know for sure that they were really treated well anyway. But I think sometimes I've read that fellow animals were actually just abandoned when the war was over, or when people left, when the humans left a certain town or city, they would sometimes leave fellow animals behind and things like that, seeing them more as like a resource, like a tank or a vehicle. I'm sure not all the time, but yeah. So in a way they are being consistent, just not in a way that we would see it. Definitely not morally consistent, but welfareism, as we know, is morally corrupt, as is speciesism.
We do know that, don't we?
We do know that.
Yeah, we do. So I don't know whether this is the one where it had the story that you were. I'm not quite sure if it is, because we both noticed particular stories. I noticed one about bats. See this one there? I noticed that as well. A fox cub. So that would be,
They don't really know much about this one, but just that this fox was, a mascot, but they don't really know much about what was going on and why she or he was there.
Yeah, and probably.
Yeah, Deb was saying about the service dogs were abandoned when the USA left Vietnam.
All right. Don't forget, you can bring the captions up, Wendy. Don't forget.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the power it returneth. Yes.
The power.
That's right, you did that all on your own.
I know. I'm clever.
And another interesting thing about all these mascots, of course, is they're all chained down, aren't they? Which is another indication of what's going on. So
that picture, for some reason, that picture,
that one
just gave me such such a overwhelming feeling of sorrow looking at that picture. And I can't really put into words why. It was just this visceral reaction to that particular picture, seeing that poor person being.
It is a very distressing one. I think this is Greece. They are just landing mules in another area in the north Greece. So probably this was one of the ways they were transported. But it's so sad, because you have this feeling that they are just transporting an object, not a living being.
Yeah, which according to all these comments as well from Antonio as well, wild horses in the USA are from abandoned horses left after the gold rush. So it seems we just have this way of completely commodifying fellow animals, even when we're commemorating them and saying they're heroes and they've done this amazing service, we still manage to commodify them in the end and see them as a mere object. Shocking. but not surprising, sadly.
Carrier pigeons. I wonder what the success rate. I mean, obviously, carrier pigeons were to take messages here, there, and everywhere, weren't they? So I don't really know how they did it. I mean, they'd obviously, you'd have to do it during a long haul here, because you'd have to take the ones who had to go one direction would have to be there for a while. So when you release them, they go there, and then if you want them to go somewhere else, they'd have to be there for a while. I mean, when we rescued pigeons for Back into Daylight Animal Sanctuary, the guy that we took them off said, you better keep them in for about 3 to 5 months, otherwise they'll fly back here, right? So I don't know what the training rate, was, but it must have been quite involved. I would have thought. I mean, maybe people in the comments will know that. Laying telephone wire. Look at that. Wow. Yeah, so that's got a wire that just spins as they walk forward. Animal welfare. Yeah, I believe you. Now, what's that? That's a carrier pigeon, right? Oh, carrier pigeon doing gas drill. Holy moly. Oh, is that a weird kind of gas mask? It's like a gas chamber, isn't it?
Like a chamber to protect them.
Gas going in. Yeah. Wow.
And yet during the Iraq War, there was an intention to use chickens caged chickens on top of the US military's Hummers as they went into Kuwait, and they had 43 chickens, and the plan was to put them on top so that as they entered, a bit like canaries in the mines, that they would detect any harmful chemicals or nerve agents and things like that. But within a really short space of time, 41 of the chickens had died, so they had to abandon that. But that was another use of birds.
Yeah, it reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember that? All that with the film.
Oh, I forgot the film.
Well, yeah, that's got kind of like canaries for that job, as it were. Okay, let me stop my screen and then get the other one. Well, about 2 more left. Let me just.
And Linda's saying, "Oh, I keep forgetting I can do this." Linda's saying pigeons are now classed as vermin. I know, it's short memories, isn't it, Linda? How we can use them so extensively, and then no, they're just they're in our way. They're in our way. They're invading our spaces and all of that bullshit. Sorry, bulls. Must find another word for bullshit.
Catch it. Right, hang on a second. I'm really good at doing this job today. Where are we? Here we go. All right. So I think this is the one that includes your pig, I think.
Oh yes.
One. Yeah. So the individual stories. Oh yeah, the war horse one is a famous one, isn't it? The horse the Germans couldn't kill. That's on YouTube. But the one that you picked out, Wendy, was this one. Before we get to that, going back to what you were saying about donkeys, Noah, I think the Israeli army have got license to shoot the donkeys because the snipers are killing them because they are the main form of transport in Gaza. So it's good, isn't it? You tell them to leave and then you shoot their transport. So this is, what is it, Tirpitz? Do you think Tirpitz?
Yes, that's how I'd say it, but I'm not sure if that's correct. But Tirpitz, the pig. Yeah. So originally Tirpitz was kept on a German cruiser, SMS Dresden, and they think that the pig was there to be dinner, basically, for the captain. But then the Dresden was sunk in 1915, and then the ship and the pig were were abandoned by the crew, but she was a she, managed to get herself up on deck, and then she was frantically swimming away from the vessel and spotted by someone from a HMS Glasgow and a British ship nearby. So then a sailor actually jumped into the water to try and save her, and the pig was panicking and she actually nearly drowned him, but they were both rescued. And then so this pig, who was on a German ship, then became the mascot of HMS Glasgow. And the British sailors awarded her a fake Iron Cross for staying on board the Dresden longer than her German crewmates. But what's really, really, again, really shocking about this story is she spent a year on the Glasgow and she was adopted by the petty officer. And then, so he'd saved her, and then she was transferred to Whale Island Gunnery in Portsmouth. But after that, she was actually auctioned off for so-called pork 4 years later, and the money that they raised, which was like nearly £2,000, was given to the British Red Cross. But then, in a very macabre turn, they actually stuffed Tirpitz's head and a pair of silver-mounted carvers made from her trotters, and they were donated to the Imperial War Museum, and they're on display there, which I just find so, I don't know. I can't even,
you
can't even believe that they would, even speciesists and welfareists, surely there's some boundaries that you don't cross. But I just don't know. I just don't understand that at all. How you could betray her like that.
Yeah, even those individuals who kind of save themselves from slaughterhouses, they tend then not to be used for food, because it's almost as though their actions have kind of exempted them from their normal use. That's but not in this case. It's
not
just
in
delayed.
this case.
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Because even individuals who escape, we see that a lot, don't we? Individuals who escape from a so-called farm or wherever, usually the public are really rallying behind them, going, oh, send them to freedom, let them have freedom and go to a sanctuary or whatever, because they don't want them. It's like the fact that they've escaped has exempted them. But yeah, so this is particularly shocking.
Did indeed. Okay, let me get rid of that one, and then just check I've got the right one. Here we go. Yeah, so we can get rid of that one there. Dum. I'm doing all my thinking out loud today, as you notice. There you go. Boom, bum. And then green. That's it. Yeah. Okay, so the thing that really caught my eye was the bat bombs. It says here, there have been some bizarre examples of animals being used in war, but none rank higher than the famous or infamous bat bombs of World War II. A short while after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, an American dentist, I don't know where that comes into it, called Lyle S. Adams, pitched the idea to the White House. They hoped to bring their new mortal enemy to its knees. The idea was to strap timed incendiary bombs to Mexican free-tailed bats. What is it about Americans? They don't like Mexico at all, do they? Mexican free-tailed bats, and then drop the creatures over various Japanese cities just before dawn. And then the idea was the bats are going to roost in the heaves, I suppose, of the buildings, and then explode. Again, you can't make it up, can you?
No, it's horrific. But yeah, the cheery end to that particular story is it didn't work.
It didn't work,
and it didn't work, or they abandoned that idea in favour of the atomic bomb. So jolly little end to the story.
Yes. Yeah, you like that little irony, don't you, Wendy?
I know. Well, it's just, I don't know. You always think that you're not surprised by humans anymore, but then you still are on a daily basis.
No.
There's another story in this article actually that caught my eye and surprised me, was the bear. Actually, did you read the one about the bear?
I didn't know. Tell me.
So Wojtek, I think, is the pronunciation. I'm not 100% sure. Polish this bear was traded for a Swiss Army knife by Polish soldiers, and the Polish soldiers, why can't I say that? Polish soldiers raised the bear on condensed milk out of an empty vodka bottle, and they taught him how to march and salute. And then they said he was allowed treats as he grew up. He was allowed treats of beer and cigarettes, and also he had a love of long cold showers, which used to see them have water shortages on the camp. But as he grew up, he became a 40-stone adult, and then he was officially enlisted to secure, so he could have his rations secured. And then he actually rose from private to corporal because of his actions in a battle, the Battle of Monte Cassino, I think it was, and he helped carry ammunition crates to the front line. But then he actually survived the war, and then he lived out his years in Edinburgh Zoo, which again, you just feel like what an experience this poor bear has had, like growing up on condensed milk, beer, cigarettes, serving on the front line, and then being put into captivity for people to just come and stare at. And you just think, wow, what a horrible experience.
Or last known situation is now President-elect of North America. So there you go.
Imagine having fought for freedom, even if not by choice, and then dying in prison in the zoo.
Yeah, I know. Shocking, isn't it? And yet for the humans, that would be probably the closest thing to freedom they would imagine for the bear, because they can't send him back out to live with his own kind, or out back in freedom. So yeah, very sad.
Yeah, they just go from kind of combatants and heroes back to just animals, don't they? At the end of the war. So yeah, I was struck by this condensed milk from an empty vodka bottle. I suppose it's better than vodka from an empty condensed milk tin, I suppose. But there you go. There's also a comment here by Tom. Welcome, Tom. How you doing? Tom used to be a regular on the show, as people will remember.
Oh, hey, Tom.
I remember as a teenager going to a museum in, how do you pronounce that?
Ypres.
Right.
Ypres.
Yeah. Well, I should know that. I've seen that pronounced before. About trench wars. Some of the photographs at the Museum of Horses Injured and Killed during World War I are horrific. Stayed with me. Yeah, I mean, we're showing a lot of pictures from World War II, but I imagine World War I was even worse for our fellow animals, I would think.
Yeah, and I think, because I think Tom mentioned the film, that also there's a stage, a play, isn't there, with the puppets, the famous puppet horses from War Horse. It was a big show here in the UK from the National Theatre. It started, and then I think it toured, and it was huge, immensely popular show. And I think that predated the film, I believe.
Right. Okay, so that's our animals in wartime. So it's a real kind of morally, and makes you feel a real kind of mixed bag of emotions, doesn't it? Because kind of,
yeah, it really does.
It's almost like their status slightly rises in an instrumental way for a while, and then the conflict is over, and then boom, they're either back as food or back as just animals in zoos, right?
Yeah. Or abandoned objects like vehicles, just left.
Yeah.
And of course, they're still being used to this day. Just again, that finally on that last article, they were talking about dolphins, how again humans have exploited and used the heightened intelligence of dolphins to deploy them in warfare, like for search and rescue and mine clearance and guarding boats and equipment. And they were used in the Vietnam, Gulf and Iraq wars. They were used by American and Soviet militaries as well. And I think they're still used now by the US Navy. It's Navy Marine Mammal Program continues to operate today in California. So they're still training dolphins and sea lions and I think beluga whales as well in this kind of deployment.
I've seen footage of beluga whales, yeah. they got something strapped to there. In fact, I think there's a scene in the Animals film about all that as well.
Right.
Because I mean, that was another thing. I mean, in the Animals film, which was 1981, they had the atomic arc, which is really difficult to watch. The footage of that is really bad. So basically, when they were testing the nuclear weapons, they put a boat just full of our fellow animals tethered to the deck, and just to see what would happen to them and everything. But they must have had not hidden cameras, but mounted cameras. And the foot, when the blast hits and all, it's really horrendous. Anyway.
And Carolyn's actually saying something similar. Non-human animals are also used in military experiments and vivisection. And I know I have been involved here in the UK down at Porton Down, where they take, there's a lot of that going on in terms of, I think especially a lot of pigs are used in kind of testing ammunition and things like this. It's just horrendous, but yeah.
Well, here's a bit of good news, kind of. It's a little bit bittersweet, this one now, isn't it? Because so 43 monkeys escaped from, this was your one, Nella, yeah?
Yes, and at the beginning, when I read about it in a Greek site, I was really excited, and I started looking for more information. So apparently, in North Carolina, there is this research facility breeding primates, and these 43 monkeys, all young females, managed to escape when someone left the door open. And my first thought was good for them, and I was overjoyed. And then I realized that they are going to try and catch them, and they actually did. They managed to recapture 25 of them. And reading all this information made me really sad, because you had all this info about trying to lure them with fruit and vegetables, because they cannot find enough food in the area they are hiding for the moment, and the police is looking for them. They are on their own. They are from what I understand. They're actually on their own. They know that there are humans after them, and they are still trying to hide. And they have led these so-called humane traps in order to capture them, but they haven't been successful. So apparently the monkeys understood that they should not go there for the food. And I hope that at least some of them won't be captured. I don't know how easy it is for them to survive in that specific area. And I was also surprised by the fact that the police asked the residents in the area to keep their doors closed. And we're talking about like 3-4 kilos these individuals are waiting, so they could hardly harm a human.
I found that really surprising.
Yeah. They're not really a threat. They wouldn't be a threat anyway, but the language used in the articles about them.
Yeah, I'll answer that one. It wasn't what Nella said, that there was a door left open. They tunneled out, so they liberated themselves. They tunneled out like World War II commandos. No, I think a door was left open, as Nella said. Yeah.
Yeah, but they liberated themselves. I mean, they know. Yeah, apparently they know how a door functions. Of course, they know, and they managed to liberate themselves.
Sorry, Nelly, did you? I thought you went on silent then. No, I think it's just my end. I was really, again, stunned by the language that they use, because in this particular report, they talk about the monkeys as fugitives, and it's it's just so funny because I mean they're all young, they're really young, like you said, they're young, they're females, they're small, you know, they're 3.5 kilos compared to an adult human, and yet they're called fugitives, when anyone, you know, who understands what's happening here knows that they've been bred and they're in captivity, they're captives, you know, they're basically prisoners, but they're treating them like prisoners who've done something wrong, like they're, you know, they're escaping and they shouldn't be out there because actually they deserve to be here, or, you know, they should be captive. And it's just that use of language, fugitives, I found that really kind of quite sinister, I think.
Antonio makes an interesting point, because this used to come up when I was a press officer for the ALF. It would be true that they would be used for that, but the point is they would have probably escaped from a holding unit, not the laboratory, because laboratories are very, very secure. So once they were actually administered a disease, then they would have probably kept in the laboratories and then killed. So there's always this thing about, oh, you know, the ALF have liberated some research subject, and what is that going to do in terms of what are they have been infected with? Well, you can't get to those ones. It's too late. By the time they're actually under procedure, it's kind of too late. The ones who you can get to are in the holding units beforehand, you know. So just to clear that up, in other words, there's not much of a danger that these ones who would liberate themselves were a danger to anybody in a kind of disease sense.
No, and actually representatives of the facility said that they're too young to be infected, so they were not used yet, apparently.
Yeah,
so that's right. They'd have been in the animal house, wouldn't they? That's right. Yeah. So.
And also they said in this report that it was very frustrating that the monkeys had escaped, but they were hoping for a happy ending. And I was thinking, well, happy for who? It's not going to be happy for them, is it? Definitely not.
What's that supposed to mean? Happy ending, yeah.
I know, a happy ending. It just makes me so angry. All this, you know, the way we frame these stories about these individuals.
Well, one thing that was a surprise, though, you see, I don't know whether that's to do with how valuable the individuals are, but I mean, certainly when minks are liberated, they are then just killed by anybody who sees them, you know, farmers, and they usually, you know, get a bit of a posse together and all that kind of stuff. Whereas here, they're talking about recapturing them.
Yeah.
So, which must be a lot harder than just shooting them. So there must be a reason why they've chosen that rather than just killing them.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was like a cell out there, a cell of solidarity who could like liaise with the other animals who liberate themselves, and there was like an underground cell who was like in solidarity, and you could just kind of somehow make them disappear into a much better environment, wherever that might be.
Yeah, the Underground Railroad, you mean?
Yeah, like and just elude the humans who are trying to recapture them.
Yeah,
that's the stuff of my fantasies, anyway.
Yeah, it is.
It's never great when you hear, I mean, what Nella said, that the police are after them, because whenever law enforcement goes after individuals who liberate themselves, it usually ends pretty badly, doesn't it? You know, the circus animals and the, you know, et cetera, and all that. So I think that we're out of those. Oh, am I going to do my thing then? Am I? So
yeah, looks like we've got time.
Yeah. Okay. So something came up which piqued my interest, and given the fact that we were putting this together, this show on short notice, so what I've got is something that has actually happened within the last 24 hours, but there's two aspects to it. So I'll explain that, and of course it's going to be very interesting for us as the Animal Rights Show. So I got a few notes, so just go through these. So it like I say, a few hours ago, I think it's about 12 hours ago, Claire Mann is the vegan applied psychologist. I'm sure many people will know her. Says that almost 100% of vegans tell her this. And then the quote from the people saying, the biggest shock when I tell people about hidden animal cruelty everywhere is that they don't become vegan immediately. So Claire is saying that vegans are telling her as a psychologist, that's their biggest shock in terms of outreach or interaction with family members or whoever, right? So responding to those points, Claire said that being a psychologist herself was helpful in the sense that she understands that human behavior is complex and, quote, it is possible for good people to do bad things. And so she's saying that means then that, we've got to concentrate on education, because with education, people, even those who are good but do bad things, can change. And of course, that's true. So the other element of it, which caught my attention, was last night, a vegan influencer released an expose of free-range pig farming in Britain. It was presented from within the new welfare paradigm, which again is fair enough. I mean, the movement is a new welfarist movement. It had a clickbait title, something to do with like the nation is going to be shocked by this and this kind of stuff. It focused in particular on a cruel pig farmer or a worker who was referred to a few times as a rough diamond, because that's how the farm describes some of their workers. And often when these kind of things happen, that gets translated into a bad apple, that kind of thing. A vet was featured in the film in order to tell us about the cruelty and the neglect and about the animal welfare regulations that were being broken. One thing in terms of the tone of the film, or the kind of stylistic aspects, if you like, is I was interested in, there was some put on shock and disgust in the show. It was kind of like acted, really. For example, when they found the dead bins and the sheds crammed with pigs in this so-called free-range facilities. So there's a lot of, oh my God, kind of statements being made in the film. The lead investigator is an experienced animal advocate. And we know for a fact that they've been in lots of places that use our fellow animals in lots of different various ways. So it's extremely unlikely that anything found in this farm will have shocked or surprised the vegans who went in. So in other words, the shock is for the audience's benefit. In fact, shock was the subtitle of, it came up in different sections, subtitle of a section called Day One of the Investigation, and the subtitle was Shock. So the narration of the film was about getting documentary evidence to show to an expert in order to ask the question, why? In particular, why so much death on a free-range farm? Now, obviously, we as vegans, we know why. This is an animal use facility, and they're death farms. Our fellow animals are items of property, and so they're going to be killed in one way or another. And in terms of the fact that many of them were sick, etc., a degree of mortality is tolerated within these units. It's actually factored in as part of their business plan. So it means that whatever welfare is involved, you can lower it and then just let a percentage of them die. And so long as that's kept within, kind of profitable margins, that's fine. So the film shows the details of what all vegans already know, that there are bad things happening on free-range farms. So the film was indeed, going back to Claire, indeed about hidden animal cruelty. And the main word used in the film was abuses. And so I looked at the comments before we came on air, and the main word used in the comments is cruelty and abuse. So the tone of the film, it was about shock, it was about horror, it was about cruelty, it was about abuse. And so as an animal rights advocate, I was struck by all that. And I was struck in particular by the lack of talk about animal use in those terms, nothing about rights violations. You know, all that was gone. So I found it fascinating that these two things were happening on the same day. Claire Mann saying that almost 100% of the vegans that talk to her are shocked, and that, you know, people, after being told about animal cruelty, don't go vegan. And this documentary about animal cruelty on a free range farm. So for me, this is interesting because, I mean, first of all, in terms of the film, it underlines for me a massive missed opportunity. If we vegan activists think that we can magically make a meaningful connection between animal cruelty and veganism, I think we're going to fail. So we have to talk about animal rights and get support for the notion that our fellow animals are rights bearers and that what humans do to them are rights violations. The public are already opposed to animal cruelty and animal abuse. So if they see the film, their first thought is not going to be, I should go vegan. Their first thought is going to be, something should happen to make this cruelty stop. And then they can go back then to using our fellow animals in the knowledge that animal use is generally free of animal cruelty. Ask the majority of the public and they will agree that animal cruelty is wrong, that animal abuse is wrong, that humans should be merciful towards our fellow animals. They think, their mindset, they think in the paradigm they've been socialized to think in, and that paradigm is animal welfarism. And animal welfarism is deeply embedded within the ideology of cultural speciesism. So the ideology of animal welfarism promises people that non-cruel animal use is morally permissible. But it also says that non-cruel animal use is not only doable, it's also what usually happens. So this is why speciesists are universally opposed to animal cruelty, but they're not opposed to animal use. So if animal advocates keep telling people about hidden animal cruelty everywhere, the response is that they won't go vegan. What they'll want is for the cruelty to stop, for whoever's job it is to stop this cruelty to get their fingers out. They won't think about animal use because we don't couch it in those terms. We couch it in the welfare paradigm. So unless we learn to view our relations with our fellow animals outside of the welfare paradigm, this pattern and these types of missed opportunities, seems to me, will just be repeated over and over again.
I have, I'm not sure if you have finished, but if you have, I have a couple of thoughts about it.
I have, yeah, go ahead.
As for Claire Mann's post, if you remember, we had Maria Ioannidou, Dr. Maria Ioannidou, as a guest at the show, and she's also a psychologist, and she has been studying the 7, I think, there are 7 different ways that the human mind uses in order to justify the use of other animals, like commodification, otherization, and procedures like kinds of thinking like that. So it's to be expected that people won't go vegan because they've seen or they have heard about something. But there are many people that went vegan after seeing watching one of those documentaries that are full of violence against our fellow animals. So what I'm thinking is that humans are not as reasonable as we think, or we are more emotional that we think. So I think that one should make an appeal to emotion in order to capture the audience and then proceed to the rights argument. Because I believe that without some kind of emotional reaction, I find hard to believe that humans will engage with the idea of rights unless they are already engaged or involved in some kind of social justice group or actions. I mean, I'm trying to imagine stopping people at an outreach event and going straight from zero to rights, and I'm not sure that they will engage. But I also agree that if we limit ourselves to cruelty and this kind of language, people will go from zero to being worried about the ways the other animals are killed, and not the moral issue, the true moral issue. So I think that we should combine an appeal to emotion and then an appeal to reason. We should combine these two for maximum effect. What do you think?
Well, yeah, my first reaction to that is to agree with it. I mean, as Tom says, we talk about claims making. So I've always said things like there's no such thing as cruelty footage. It's to do with what we say about it afterwards. And in relation to emotion, I totally agree with you. And that's what Tom Reagan said, that, there's nothing wrong with emotion and there's nothing wrong with rationality. But then we have to then to move the conversation where we want it, to actually use the conversation that we want and the language we want in order for people to consider it. What tends to happen now, I see, is that the entire conversation that goes on half the time is within the welfare paradigm, and it never comes out of there. And then if there's any disagreement, activists will often then start, talking to people and saying, well, you're just an animal abuser and this kind of stuff and all that kind of stuff. Whereas there's no kind of movement, no deliberate movement to say, well, that's the welfare paradigm. We don't stand for welfare. We stand for animal liberation. We stand for animal rights. And the difference between that and that is this. We that's the bit that we don't do. And I don't understand. I mean, we don't make the case for animal rights. I mean, like no modern day activist on YouTube can stand there like Tom Reagan did and make the case for animal rights. They show animal cruelty pictures and footage and stuff. So I think there's an issue, but I've got absolutely no objection to appealing to emotions. It's to do with what claims making goes with the imagery.
Yes, I agree. Most of the time, it's what you just described. But I would say that there are activists that talk about animal rights, and especially those that talk about language. And every time I give or hear a speech about speciesism and language, what I get from the audience is they all agree, but these are things they haven't thought about in most cases. So Wendy would have to say more.
Yeah, no, because I agree with what you've both said and what some of the comments in the chat as well. I think it's a combination of things that the language we use is not taking people to where we want them to be, or it's not the same meaning, because our meaning of the words that we use, cruelty and abuse, are very different. And I've spoken about this in a few different panels and talks. When I talk about language, that's often what I focus on as well, is that we're using words that are understood in a different way by people who are not vegan, because they understand cruelty and abuse in a certain way under a welfare speciesist paradigm, whereas we have evolved our language, and the way we see the words we use have evolved. Like, we see cruelty as very different. We see all use as, oh, sorry, that's Brian's alarm. It's earlier now. That's his. Yeah, we see all use as abuse. We see all use as cruel. Any a fellow animal who isn't free, we see that as cruel, whereas most people don't see that. They see a very different world, through very different spectacles. And I think I agree with the emotion thing as well, because humans make decisions based on emotion. We think we base it on our rational mind, but we don't. Our emotional mind is much quicker, much older, much more. It's been there, it's there much earlier. Our prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until we're older. It's a younger part of the brain in terms of our evolution. We make decisions from an emotional mind as opposed to a rational mind. We tend to layer reason on afterwards to justify our decisions, which is really interesting. So I definitely agree with trying to appeal to people's emotion and getting them engaged emotionally. So I totally agree with that as well. And I think with the language, it's like I think unless people hear it, like Roger was saying as well, who says it then? Who gets to? How do people get to hear what we actually want as animal rights advocates? Because we need a change in relationship with our fellow animals, a relationship that's one where we respect their freedom, their autonomy, their self-determination, their rights as individuals, not as objects and commodities. And yet we never really say that. We don't ever say that. So it's like, how does anyone ever understand that? It's not their fault that they don't understand it, because no one's ever saying it. And I think people are, like as Nella said, that people are saying it, but maybe we're not the ones with the loudest voices. We're not the people with the biggest platforms. We're not the people who are out there with, like thousands of followers. So the message, the cruelty message, is on a bigger platform, and it's being perpetuated by new vegans coming into the movement as well. Whereas the rights message and the shift of language and the trying to frame things as a relationship, as inherent rights, it's like as a movement we don't understand it ourselves. We're not able to talk about it ourselves, and so we're not saying it to others. And I think I think there needs to be a change within the movement, like to understand it ourselves and to help each other to explain what we want to say in a simple way, but in a way that actually says what we really want and doesn't just hide behind the cruelty thing all the time. And I think some people don't even realize that the cruelty message isn't hitting home, because it's just they come into the movement and all they hear is cruelty, abuse, cruelty, abuse. They become saturated by that. It's the new message. And yeah, that definitely I think could do with some work for sure.
What I think about your point there, Wendy, is that I'm forever told by animal advocates that we've got to meet people where they are. And that immediately makes the point that you just made, is the fact that, okay, we've got to understand their use of the word cruelty then. And we've got to get them, at the very least, to move from their use of it to what we're talking about. Yeah. But, I'd prefer to kind of like understand their use of cruelty and then move them to our use of animal rights. And that's the journey that we've got to take people on. When we meet people on the street or through education, we need to take them. It used to happen in Dublin quite a lot, when people come and they'd invariably start talking about animal cruelty and animal welfare. And we would explain that, yeah, I hear you, we're actually not animal welfarists. And the difference between that and what we are is this and all that. And loads of times, remember very, very clearly, people said, oh, blimey, I didn't know that this conversation was going to go there. Oh, I've never thought of it that way. Oh, that's interesting. But, so you don't not go to where they are. It's just that you could take them somewhere else. That's what it's all about.
You bring them along.
Yeah.
You bring them along with you.
Do that relatively quickly in a conversation. So, I mean, if you are having a conversation in the street, for example, my experience is that we should do that quickly. So, move quickly from cruelty, from emotion to something else. Even if we judge that we cannot use right language, which I do not find to be a problem. But anyway, these are concepts we can easily explain and explain quickly, but we should do that. Otherwise, the person just leaves and goes to buy something, I don't know, free range.
I think talking about free range, I think what's happening at the moment in the movement is advocates are trying to dispel some of the myths. Like, okay, you're saying you're going to go free range. Let me dispel this myth for you. This is what happens on a free range farm. Oh, the RSPCA assured. Let me dispel this myth for you. This is RSPCA assured for you. So I can see the strategies behind it, and I can see it's very well intentioned in that way, in terms of, okay, these are the objections that people have, or these are the avenues that people go down when we talk about becoming vegan. Oh, well, I can just go free range. It's not as cruel. But it's almost like, by trying to dispel these myths, they're also perpetuating the paradigm with the use of the same language and the same it's almost like we're trying to appear like we're on the same page as
it's just
these people.
of telling them what the score is, and like, for example, one way you can do it educationally is, if somebody asks you a question, you say, well, there's a range of views about that in the movement, and then you talk about that, and then you go, actually, I favor this one, but there are some people who'd probably go under the label of welfareists who would say blah blah blah. But to go to Deb's question, there is this modern form where that's what I think they're doing. They're going to people and kind of getting their views, but they also ask them questions which are built on the fact that they already know their views. So they ask them, are you against animal cruelty? And they always say yes. Are you against animal abuse? They always say yes. And they say, can you give me an example? And then they always do the speciesist thing, as you'd expect, to talk about cats and dogs and horses and privileged species and that kind of stuff. And then the third question, the gotcha question, is, well, what about slaughterhouses? Right. And that's when their cultural speciesism clicks in. And that's where their cultural speciesism, informed by animal welfarism, clicks in. Oh, well, that's a different thing. Right. Now, that is the time when the education should start. What tends to happen with these clickbaity kind of things on YouTube is that's the time when the activist starts calling them animal abusers. Oh, you're not against animal cruelty after all. You're an animal abuser because you support slaughterhouse. Without delving into the how could it be that there's that disconnect, or we would need to have a further conversation to talk about your cultural understanding. We were on the same page. We asked that question about slaughterhouses, then it breaks down. Why is that? That's the education there.
And that's often because those kind of outreachers are basically catering to vegans, aren't they? As in, this is what vegans want to see. Vegans want to see the gotcha moment. Let's get them. Let's tell them how it is. Let's tell them they're animal abusers.
Victory.
And it's like we've got a little win, and that makes us feel good because we've got a lot of anger and rage in us, and we've got a lot of we want people to sort of see things how we do, and we feel this anger, and it's a way of like getting a little bit of cathartic release, isn't it? He showed you, he really told you, but that sadly is not effective. Generally, people don't like to be shamed and told and preached at and told what to do. It just gets you back up, doesn't it? No matter what the content is.
It's understandable.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
I mean, like we've got emotions as well, going back to what Nella said. And of course, when you've got the kind of single issue type things and the kind of need, I mean, Jake Conroy, Cranky Vegan, talks about this all the time, that animal activists need victories because nobody wants to think that they're not winning. And so we need them in order to keep us going, right? And so this is a new form, vegan education form of a victory, to be able to go, you showed them and all that.
We may not know what kind of advocacy or activism is effective, but we definitely know that screaming at people is not effective. That's not debatable. Screaming at people, calling people names, it's not going to be effective. So this false sense of victory is just bullshit.
I think one of the things we're going to have to go, but I think one of the things is this phrase, holding people to account. I think that kind of almost creates aggression, or that we've got to we've got to kind of, you know, lay it on the line, and we don't go easy on them, and you don't let them off the hook, and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of almost inhuman. It's to do
Off
with
the hook, Doc? Was this a
off the
species
hook.
system?
Yeah, that's right. But that's the phrase, you know, don't let them get away, you know, until you goddamn told them, type of thing. Well, is that education or is that lecturing? You know, the things that vegans get accused of.
Often people don't respond well to shame. Actually, I think I think unlike guilt is often can be used in a positive way, because people can see guilt and think, guilt is about the behavior, and so I can change my behavior. Whereas shaming obviously is often about this: I am a bad person, and so people associate the shame with their personality, their character, who they are, rather than the behavior. So I think guilt can be a positive and reformative emotion, whereas shaming, often people double down. That's why with addicts, shaming an addict into what they're doing, you know, you're a bad person, you're an addict, actually usually makes the situation a lot worse, because people don't respond well to shame. So it's the same. It's the same here, isn't it? If we shame people into what they're doing, as much as it feels like sometimes, God, you really want to, yeah, we know it's just not going to work for sure. And I think we just have to get better at communicating as a movement, and as individuals, and, you know, practicing how to explain what we really are trying to say, what we actually want, what our perspective is, because I just don't think we're very good at that generally.
A question directed at you there, Nella.
Yes, and I would love to answer that. Hi, Elliot. Nice to see you again. The thing is, I have not any proof. I've talked to a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists that are vegan, and others that are not vegan, and they all have told me the same thing, that which is what you suspect, that you know, being aggressive with people builds defenses, and there is a lot of research about it, and about the kinds of, you know, defenses people use. So I think that you know, psychology has answered this thing already. I don't think it's a matter of opinion. There is not any scientific evidence to support that aggressiveness is effective. In the context of advocacy, but there is a lot of it suggesting that it's ineffective. And maybe we should, you know, we should do a show with a vegan psychologist or psychiatrist as a guest to, you know, to try and answer.
We should. Maybe we can get Claire Mann.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, so we should try and do that. So we're out of time, really, and I know you've got to go, haven't you, Wendy? So I suppose we ought to thank people for sticking with us and all that malarkey. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone
for that. I hope you enjoyed this kind of cobbled together show. But I actually think that going through the news is interesting myself. I don't know what your experience is. I think it's groovy.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's groovy.
Yeah, baby, and all that. Right, okay. So we'll say goodbye. So see you, everyone. We'll see you again
thanks
soon.
everyone. Good show. See you soon.
Bye-bye.